The National Investor's motto is, you can get information anywhere, but here you get knowledge. And for well over 40 years now, Chris Temple has imparted that knowledge, an unparalleled, understandable, and useful take on the big picture of the markets and of our world. He has been out in front of what you see on the news every day on many themes. More, Chris has taken this macro knowledge and his unique analytical abilities to uncover unique investment opportunities. Often, he has guided his members to big winners in resources, biotech stocks, and more. His talents and connections often getting him into ground floor opportunities before they are discovered. Without further ado, here is Chris with today's topic.
Welcome once again, folks. I'm Chris Temple, editor and publisher of the National Investor, and today is another quite unique exploration story in the precious metals space. This is Arizona Gold and Silver Incorporated, a company which I've been following for quite a while. I've had as a recommendation in the National Investor for quite a while. Shortly, you're going to meet their Vice President of Exploration, Greg Hahn, who is a seasoned veteran, geologist in a lot of different places, but especially for present purposes in the Southwest U.S. and specifically in Arizona, which is going to be the main focus of our conversation today. As you see here, Arizona Gold and Silver is listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol AZS. In the U.S., it is listed under the symbol AZASF. So make sure that you check them out. Go to the exchange website, go to the company's website. Here, in fact, where that's concerned is their contact information. And as I always say, we like to give a big picture view of the companies that we bring on an interview. Again, they've all been vetted by me in the past, and they're already a member or a recommendation rather to my members at the National Investor. But we urge you to do your own homework. Now, when I bring him on, Greg and or myself may be making what are construed as forward-looking statements, so we want to let you know about that. And also, the National Investor has been compensated after the fact of them being made a recommendation. They pay us a fee to do some follow-on media, copywriting, and whatnot, outreach work for them, of which this video is a part. And one last thing before I bring Greg on is that we're going to have imminently following the release of this, and you're watching this video, a written version of my special issue on precious metals, very provocative as always, where we give you all of the whys and wherefores of gold and silver both, some of the things that make some people's blood boil, but good common sense stuff to tell you why these sectors merit your attention going forward. And in that, there will be a specific profile as well of Arizona Gold and Silver, and a little bit more detail as to the reasons why this is the kind of a company that makes the cut, at least where I'm concerned, because I think going forward, it's going to take quite a while for generalist investors to come back to this space. And so until that happens, you want to find companies that have got a really unique and, if you will, sexy story, exploration story that is going to animate people. And you're going to hear about that right now as I bring on Greg Hahn, who is the Vice President of Exploration for Arizona Gold and Silver and also a director of the company. Greg, welcome.
Thanks, Chris. Nice to be here.
Well, I have followed you from afar for quite a while. You're a seasoned geologist in that part of the country, and whereas Arizona Gold and Silver has a few different projects in its portfolio, we're going to focus today on the one that is gathering pretty much all of your attention as a company, and that's the Philadelphia project in the Oatman Gold District in Arizona. That's a district where I know you have a long history. Give us a little bit of a backdrop on why this is a compelling and interesting area, so much so that it came into the company where you're involved, of course, and where Mike Stark, our friend, the CEO, this has been a big thing. I remember when Mike first told me about this and his excitement and how the light bulb went off over my head when he explained the geology to me.
Well, it's an exciting district. We started Arizona Gold and Silver as a company to explore Arizona because it's sandwiched between the largest gold producing district in North America in Nevada and the largest silver producing district in Mexico. And Arizona is known as a good copper producing district, but it's underexplored for gold and silver. The Oatman District is in the northwest corner of Arizona, as close to Nevada as you can get. It's just 5 miles to the Arizona-Nevada state line. So we went to the Oatman District, where I actually explored back in the 80s for a large Canadian company named Noranda. At the time, there was a highway that went right through the property. I loved the property, but with a highway going right through it, I couldn't see what we could do with it. But fast forward 20 years, the Arizona Department of Transportation relocated the highway around the property because of old underground workings beneath the old highway. And once we determined that that was an opportunity for us, we proceeded to lease the property.
Now, I've looked at a lot of and we're going to, of course, share some of them along the way here in our discussion, Greg, but what I found of great interest initially when Mike was explaining this to me is that you've got, just like so many places all around the world, including in the Western US, you've got areas where decades ago, maybe a century or more ago, you had small scale artisanal mining, literally with people with picks and shovels that could see where something that looked interesting and like it carried some value outcropped, and they followed it as far as they could and then didn't. But give us a bit of the background of how this particular Philadelphia project, unlike a few mines that have produced to the south, one of which still is, how this one was kind of hidden by kind of this dome. I found that remarkable.
Well, the mine was operated historically from about the beginning of 1900 to about 1930. And it shut down just before World War II. We do have very good records from the U.S. Bureau of Mines that their average cost of mining was $8 a ton. And at the time, gold was trading at $20 a ton. So that means their average cost or break even was about a quarter of an ounce. And I think they stopped because they ran out of quarter of an ounce material at the headings where they were mining. So I took the leap of faith that there's probably more out there that's maybe a little under a quarter of an ounce. And we started to drill on the first leases that we could acquire. The majority of the property is reasonably well exposed along the patented claims, but there's a large target we call the Red Hills, which stands out on Google Earth on satellite imagery, but it doesn't give you a good geochemical signature. And I've been drilling these flow dome complexes and volcanic terrains for 40 years, and I understand them reasonably well. And the flow dome ends up being like the lid on a pressure cooker. It keeps all the rising fluids underneath until they explode and they don't get out of the top. And I took the approach that represented the top of a system, and we needed to work our way towards it and explore underneath it. And that seems to be working out.
So with the exception of some areas that in the past did outcrop and where they were mined somewhat, otherwise this dome kept any visible evidence from being able to be seen by people.
That's correct. I mean, it's a beautiful red hill, and that's generally a good exploration indication for geologists. But if you go there to sample it, you don't get a lot of gold geochemistry off the top of it. But you have to understand that this is the top of the system, and if the gold didn't escape, you're not going to get an anomaly at the top. So we've confirmed that now, and we're going to use that exploration model to explore the remainder of the property.
Now, when you talk about that, Greg, I know that you've done some exploration drilling to date. Pretty much every hole that you guys have drilled into this system has returned some decent gold grades. And you've got essentially two different styles of target there, correct?
We do. We have, first of all, we've drilled 110 holes ourselves. We inherited 15 from Meridian Gold, who drilled it in the early 1980s. And our success rate is a little over 80%. So we're having good success in intersecting the gold-bearing system. In most of the target area, we call it a sandwich. It has a high-grade vein at the top, a high-grade vein at the bottom, and in the middle of the sandwich is stockwork quartz. It's just like shattered glass of quartz, and the gold is distributed throughout all of that. High grade at the top and the bottom, lower grade, but still attractive grades in the middle. Off under the Red Hills, that looks to be a little different in that it's mostly all disseminated over a very large area, over 100 meters thick. And so it's a slightly different geometry, but it looks the same geologically.
And theoretically, that's because you had that dome on the top that it caused everything to just be spread out and disseminate underneath.
Exactly. I think that the top of the dome being the top of the pressure cooker held everything in except where fluids could escape out various fault avenues. And that's where the higher grade veins are, is where the fluids escaped out those faults.
Gotcha. And, for folks that are watching that don't know a great deal about mining and geology and so forth, they can't understand that these volcanic and seismic activities in ages past cause hot boiling metal containing liquids to come up from deep. And the way that they get distributed is what eventually, if in the right setting and the right circumstances, makes a mine. So you're looking at both at each of the two main types of ways in which stuff can be mined. You're looking at higher grade veins.
Right.
And you've drilled into that apparently with some of your drill holes, and you're looking at the possible larger bolt tonnage target, which is where you excavate just a big hole in the ground and process it. And you've been hitting on that as well.
Correct. I think the way for people to envision this is think of Yellowstone National Park. And the surface is just boiling, and hot pots and geysers are going off, and crystal pools are all over the place. That's what this looked like probably 15 million years ago. But all that's been stripped off by erosion, and we're now down at the roots of what caused all that geothermal activity. And
Gotcha.
it precipitated gold and silver in the process.
Wow. Now, this area where the Philadelphia project is, as I alluded to a few minutes ago, there is to the south of that, past and even one present producing, correct? Moss is the present producing one?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the district's produced over 2 million ounces to date, and we don't think it's anywhere close to seeing what the true potential of the district is.
Well, no, and you made an important point that I want to stress for folks here too, Greg, and that is that generally Arizona has been deemed a copper centric state. Nevada is called the silver state, even though it's a massive gold producer as well. Right. Mexico is a big silver producer with some gold. We all know about a couple of the major copper mines in Arizona. Resolution hopefully is going to be coming on board to add to what we need as a country in the U.S. But you're right, you don't hear about gold in the context of Arizona that much. So, but at the same time, the point being that this is not a brand new thing, that you've had these other mines to the south that have had some gold production, but you're kind of scratching the surface. It's kind of like a lot of places these days where in the past you had mining for base metals and nobody paid attention to the gold. There were times you had mining for gold and nobody paid attention to the base metals. These things kind of all go in weird cycles to where all of a sudden something becomes more relevant. Now, with the Philadelphia project, you've got a series of patented and unpatented claims. And most of your drilling to date has been within, and we'll put this graphic up on here, in that narrow rectangle of patented ground. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And you're looking to, and I know you're doing, and this is something that I wanted to let folks know as well, you're doing a small private placement right now to raise the funds for the next round of drilling. And I'd encourage people who are in our audience that are accredited investors to give that some serious consideration. Let us know if you want to take part in that. But you're going to be doing some, I think, infill drilling is the next step to come out with eventually a resource there.
Yeah, infilling is what we refer to it. They're large sectors of the mineral system that haven't been drilled yet. If this were in Nevada, it would have had hundreds of drill holes in it by now. But because it's in Arizona, it's been ignored. And we have a large section beginning at the south end of the old underground workings, where the shaft where they stopped runs about 21 meters of a quarter ounce. And there are no drill holes for 500 meters south of that shaft until you get to an area where we have done some drilling. So that's the first area we're going to drill. We call that infilling, but there's a lot of surface geochemistry that indicates it's there. There's a shaft on one side that indicates it's there, and there's a drill hole on the other side that indicates it's there. So we're pretty confident we're going to be able to continue that plus 80% success rate in drilling that area. And then we want to drill to the south again.
Right. And then it was a while back, and refresh my memory, Greg, that Mike announced in a press release that you guys had acquired a fair bit more ground around this area to make sure that you've taken all of the target area that you think is the most prime there.
Well, that's correct. We started out just chasing a high-grade vein. That was the historic production. That's what the district is known for. So that's what our expectation was. And as we started to drill this to the south, we realized that it was expanding to beyond just the veins. There was mineralization outside of the veins, and they had a very distinct alteration signature to them. And that's when the light bulb went on that said, hey, there's a lot of alteration like this out there that hasn't been staked yet. And so we went out and staked it at the end of 2021. And we now have 121 claims covering a lot of that alteration that looks identical to what's sitting on top of our 100-meter intercepts.
Wow, that's neat. So specifically now, Greg, the next steps for drilling are going to be that area that you mentioned to the south that had some high grade intercepts previously.
The focus is going to be on two areas. One is what I described just south of the old workings that
Right.
have high grade at the end of the workings. And then we're going to go to the south. And once we get our BLM permit, which is due to be issued next month, once we get that, we're going to go to the large Red Hill altered area and continue drilling those 100-meter intercepts that we were able to intersect from patented ground. Now we'll be able to drill them off of the patented ground on unpatented claims.
Neat. And so this thing could get a whole lot bigger by the time you get all done. Now last year you had you released in November a technical report on a project, and it wasn't any resource in the sense of what is to come as far as we have so many ounces of this and so many gold and silver, but you really wrapped up in a nice package. And I would encourage people to go and do their homework and read this, because it gives you a really good narrative of this whole area and what Greg and his crew are after. But you tied up a lot of the past data, the past drill results and so forth. Give us a synopsis of how, you know, your elevator pitch would portray the Philadelphia project to somebody that never heard of it before.
Well, I mean, you're right. The report we put out summarizes everything to date, and that's been helpful in introducing the project to potential strategic partners and companies that are interested in looking at us. But the pitch, what I would give is, we have drilled 110 holes in this and don't know where the end of it is yet. And it's getting thicker to the south and open to the south. And we've been precluded from drilling that until we get the BLM permit, which we're about to get, which means we should be able to chase those thicker intercepts beginning as early as April to May.
Neat. And beyond that, you, of course, and I was impressed to see that you were doing something like this at this particular stage before there was even a resource out. You have announced in December that you're starting a metallurgical program to see what the recovery rate would be of the typical material there. And I know Mike was telling me a little bit about that the other day when I asked him some questions about that press release from December. But essentially, folks, you know, you can have high grades of gold and silver, but if they're difficult to recover, I mean, they might need to be higher to be economical. Some of the initial work that you've done seems to be encouraging. I don't want to speak out of school until you actually put something out publicly, but tell us about what the objective is, the nature of the material, and how you think the gold and silver could be recovered.
Well, first of all, we have done and reported some metallurgical test work in the past, and that's to evaluate the material for milling, agitation leach, and it mills extremely well. We get 94 to 98% recovery, which is what they got historically when they shipped the material to a custom mill along the Colorado River. What we're doing now is evaluating what the potential is for heap leaching this material, which is, instead of putting it through a mill, you crush it and put it on a lined pad and you sprinkle it with cyanide solution and extract the gold that way. It's a much more cost-effective way to process material. So we're looking at that as an alternative because people are asking that question. How does it leach? We know how it mills. They're very encouraged by how it mills, but how does it leach on a heap? And we don't have an answer for that, other than we inherited some preliminary data that was generated in the 1980s that was only run for 18 days. And one of the issues why we started this early is it takes 100 days to run these tests. So they're very long-term tests, and the sooner you can get them started, the sooner you can have an answer. But in the past, they ran a couple of tests for only 18 days. And in those 18 days, they realized 50 to 60% extraction in just 18 days. So we're pretty confident we're going to be able to duplicate that and exceed it once we leach these columns for more than the 18 days that were leached in the past.
Well, and even aside from that, though, and of course, for folks that don't know, for large open pit operations or even some medium-sized open pit operations, cyanide heap leaching is the most cost-effective way to do it. But I was impressed to learn that by just milling, you were able to get such high recoveries. The importance of that, of course, being that the precious metals in the ore is not mated with materials that are going to require any kind of overly troublesome or sophisticated recovery. It seems like the stuff breaks up pretty easy.
Well, the gold is free, so it's not tied up in pyrite or tied up in carbon like it is in some deposits in Nevada.
That is nice.
It's all free. It's fine. It's in the 100 to 150 micron size range, but it's all just native gold. And so if you crush it and grind it, it comes out easily. The other thing is this is very clean ore. There is no arsenic, antimony, mercury, any deleterious metals, no copper to rob the cyanide, no lead or zinc to contaminate the tailings. It's a very, very clean material.
That is neat. So anyway, going forward, you've got this private placement right now. You're going to get that behind you, do some drilling. What would you say, Greg, would be the next 2 to 3 step process, if it's that, number of steps, to the point at which you guys are going to consider putting out at least a maiden resource of what you have there?
Well, I have a goal to drill roughly 20,000 feet. That includes both reverse circulation drilling on the shallower portions and then core drilling on the deeper portions. And once that's complete, we're prepared to put out a maiden resource. We've done some geostatistics already on our data to indicate what our drill spacing should be. We're well within the dimensions of what that geostatistics suggest our drill spacing should be. So we should have the ability to put out a maiden resource report by the end of this year or early next year at the very latest, if we get this drilling completed.
Yeah, that'd be good. Folks, there are all kinds of small exploration companies out there. Some have got more promise than others, I think. This is one that has got the potential to deliver something that you don't see every day. I mean, Greg and I were talking before we actually started recording. There's all kinds of companies out there that have got 1 million ounce current resource. They're trying to grow it to 1.2 million. There's lots and lots of them. That doesn't wow anybody. There's lots of pure greenfield exploration plays that have got just theories, but not a whole lot to go with it yet. This is something that's got the potential to go from nothing to a fairly significant resource. And in an area where, again, there's not been that much gold exploration in the past. One of the things that's impressed me, Greg, and I've complimented Mike about this repeatedly, is that in an environment that's been ho-hum at best for the share prices of junior resource companies, you guys have done, for the most part in the last couple of years, relatively better than the great majority of your peers. And I think that's for 2 reasons. One is this unique geological story, which you're looking to flesh out. And the other being that, unlike a lot of companies, you've not issued to date a whole lot of shares. Your share count currently is 80-some million. That's not a whole lot for a company like yours. And more importantly, and here you see it on the screen, folks, there's not a lot of that in the public float. A lot of this is, insiders and friends and family that have all put their money where their mouth is. And I know that early on in this present private placement you're doing, there's already commitments from some officers and insiders. So that speaks well to how tightly you're running this thing in an environment where most companies don't do it that way.
That's correct. We were lean and mean, I like to say. There are just a few of us in the company. We don't draw big salaries. We're shareholders. Our reward is the same as the general shareholder reward, and that is increase shareholder value, increase the price of the stock, and vend this project or company to a much larger company to take it beyond where we can take it.
Yeah, and folks, again, here on the screen, you see the contact information for Arizona Gold and Silver. Make sure you follow them on social media, go to their website, get on their mailing list, kick the tires. A lot more that we didn't go over. There's some really cool interviews that Greg has done over the last year or two as things have moved along to their present point. So you get a flavor for how everything has gone. You got a lot of good show and tell from site on your website, Greg. I've loved those videos. They're very educational. I need to get down there. I haven't been on your particular project before, but at least I get the benefit of it from afar. But folks, kick the tires. This is something that, again, out of the universe of so many junior exploration stocks out there, is one that made it to the top of my list. So much so that I, quite a while ago, recommended that our members at the National Investor take positions in it, as I've done, and as I suggest you give some consideration to. So make sure as well, if you're not already on my mailing list, that you get on there, because there will be more coming to you as well on Arizona Gold and Silver. So Greg, I appreciate the time. I'm looking forward to keeping lines of communication open, and for these next bits of news to come out. And the next one likely will be some results on the metallurgical work on heap leaching, correct?
Well, we're 30 days into it, and like I say, we're going to run them for 100 to 120 days. So
okay,
they'll be out there a ways. But,
so a couple of months or so down the road, we'll know more about that.
Correct.
All right, great. Well, keep up the good work, and I'll look forward to more news to come.
Will do. Thanks for having me on, Chris.
Thanks, Greg.
For much more of the National Investor's cutting-edge content and actionable investment opportunities, make sure to subscribe to Chris's free content at nationalinvestor.com. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel too. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.